Well, good morning. Welcome to the Better Beans presentation. My name is Brad Zimmerman, and a little bit about myself before we get started. I live in central Illinois in Tazewell County between Peoria and Bloomington, a little town called Groveland, where we have a four-way stop and a Casey's, but no Dollar General yet. So we're still waiting for that. But small town right outside of Peoria. And so I'm super excited to be here. I farm a little bit. I do agronomy consultation as well, channel seedsmen, build fertility for guys and things like that. So that's what moves me. That's what my passion is. I love challenging the status quo and trying to do things differently and a little bit better. So I'm not afraid to fail, as you will see in this presentation. And I think that's how we learn. So we got to fail in order to grow. So, but yeah, so my presentation is called Learn, Unlearn, and Relearn. And basically what that means is that as we are presented with knowledge throughout our life, we need to challenge that. And we need to take what may not be accurate at the time. Maybe it was accurate 10 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago, but may not pertain to us today. So in doing that, we got to unlearn some things and forget about some things and think about them differently. And therefore we relearn. So obviously that's just a constant process in life, whether you're in agronomy or farming or cooking or finances, whatever you're doing is something that we have to do in order to grow and get better and be successful. So first off, congratulations, Illinois. You're number one, top soybean producer in the state or in the United States. Illinois was the biggest and baddest, and we can claim that top spot again this year. Second in corn. I think we got some work to do, but obviously Illinois Soybean Association is one of the main reasons for Illinois being top producer of soybeans. All kidding aside, they do a great job as far as educating us. I was a Soy Envoy this year, which was a great opportunity, and would encourage anybody with any interest in educating growers and learning more and networking to sign up for this, as it was a really good time. It was a bit challenging at times writing blog posts and videos, but again, if you can challenge yourself and get out of your comfort zone, it was really a fun time. So these are just a few pictures of my place and our operation and what we do. And I'm a fifth generation farmer, learned from my grandfather and my father. And when my dad passed away, when I was 35, my mom handed me the checkbook and said, "Here you go, don't screw it up." And so that's where I was at. I kind of got thrown into it. Gladly though, I was hugely excited for the opportunity. And I started doing things a little bit differently. My dad was a bit of a pioneer. He started no-tilling in the mid 80s. I went to strip till in the mid 90s and saw the value of taking care of the soil. And I remember one of my most vivid memories, we were out planting and we had the chains dragging behind the rows. And when I saw that the chains were pulling some of the residue, the corn residue back, we were planting soybeans, it was pulling the corn residue over to the top of the furrow, top of the row. I kind of questioned Dad about that. I'm like, shouldn't we, take these chains off? Do we really need that? Isn't that just gonna, cause the emergence to be delayed or, any multiple factors? And he said, no, he's like, I want that. That's what I'm looking for. I want that because that's going to shield the raindrops from compacting the ground. And I had never thought about it that way. And it made sense. And so that's just one of the examples and things I learned from my dad. So we've been doing that. Residue is very important to us. We've learned how to manage around that residue. So we live in harmony with it. We use cereal rye ahead of our soybeans, and we plant green. We also do some cover crops ahead of corn, and we're still working on that. Don't have that all figured out. One of the most interesting things I think that I've done in farming was when we flew on a 12-way mix ahead of corn. So it's in standing soybeans, that picture on the right. And it started growing. We got a good rain, started growing. And then when we harvested the beans, we were basically, rolling on a green carpet. So it was like carpet farming again, which I thought was pretty cool. And just a neat experience to see the dried decaying soybeans and the green cover underneath. So very fascinating. So let's recap last couple of years. 2022 was a great year to be a farmer. We had, at least here in Central Illinois, we had terrific yields. We had great prices to sell them at, and a lot, actually most of the growers I talked to this year are having to deal with too much income, or how to deal with that on their taxes. So after enduring several years like 2019 here, where it was very wet, and we saw lots of implements being pulled out by other implements who might have gotten stuck to be pulled out by another implement. 2019 was definitely a year of wetness in the spring. I remember we got our planter stuck several times and had to pull it out and left some pretty deep ruts. And 2019 was wet. 2020 was the year of COVID. So me as a farmer, I don't know that I was super affected by COVID, at least in my day-to-day job of, planting and things like that. Seed delivery was a little bit different, and we took precautions that way. But, growers are used to working, by themselves, or maybe isolated parts of the year. But Zoom was developed, and podcasts were great. They came on very strongly too. So 2020 was a little bit challenging. 2021 was the year of tar spot. And I think a lot of us got taken by surprise on how quickly this disease crept up on us, and how quickly it cannibalized our corn and yields, and caused standability issues and a whole host of other issues. And you can kind of see, as we're learning more about this disease, on that leaf there, you can see the little specks kind of look like welding splatter. And as we find out more and more about this disease, it looks like those specks are very similar to welding splatter. They're an oxidized form of manganese. And so it's really been fascinating to see what tar spot is doing and how it's doing. And it's a very novel disease that we're still learning about. So farming can be stressful. It can also be a lot of fun though too. So it all depends on how you look at it. So this last year, like I said, we grew some pretty good yields, and very fortunate. I don't think we were counting on it this year by doing stand counts and weighing ears and things like that. But we did end up doing very, very well. I think a little bit of that was lack of disease. So this year we did not see tar spot in our area, and there was very little disease, whether it's gray leaf or northern or southern rust. But we were very, very fortunate. Plant health was fantastic, and that allowed us to finish out our corn crop and add quite a bit of depth to kernel and density. You can see here, like I said, plant health was great throughout the year, and we had some beautiful, beautiful ears and big kernels. This is an example of a side-by-side that we did here on our farm. The difference between the one on the left and the one on the right, the only difference is biology. So we added a biological microbe that, for all intents and purposes, clones the bottom 4 nodes on a soybean stalk. And so it thinks it's its own plant, and therefore will branch. So your bottom 4 nodes will branch and put on their own stems. So first year working with that, super interested to see how it goes going forward. But I think that's what a lot of guys are looking for, and what I encourage guys to do is encourage branching, whether it's lowering populations or now we have some biological means that can help us do that as well. One thing that I like to include in my presentations is this one with Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Believe in yourself, even if no one else will. So when I started in 2013, when Dad passed, I started with cover crops, and I didn't start slowly. It was something I believed in. I believed in rebuilding the soils that we had. I don't want to say not taken care of, but they had been degraded. They had been tilled. Some of them had some rental ground. They had been tilled pretty excessively, and the biological engine was not there. The soil structure was not there. The fertility, accessibility was not there. And so I really liked what I saw with some of the cover crops that I had done in the past, and talking to other guys, I really jumped into that wholeheartedly. So a lot of guys looked funny at me, and which is fine. I wasn't sure I knew what I was doing either, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned. This is some examples of some of the trials that we did this year. Going from left to right, we just started stacking. Again, this is only with biological products, the difference in these. So same population, same planting date, same variety. Everything's the same except for the biological treatment that we did in furrow. So I'm really excited by what we're seeing in terms of being able to, I don't want to say manipulate, but edge genetics into the direction that we want. We want more branching. We want tighter pods. We want bigger roots. So, and then on the right, we were doing another biological that replaces nitrogen in the corn, and just some of the biomass pictures, and really encouraged with what we're seeing there as well. This is a picture of my farm, and what I did was in 2021, we took 40 acres and put in some grass pathways and divided that 40 acres up into 80 half-acre plots. And so we do replicated testing of whatever we want to test. So if you've got any ideas, let me know. I'll have my contact information here at the end, but a lot of it deals with some of the hot stuff that people are asking about: biology, biologicals, biostimulants, microbes. But the determining factor and what's common to all of these is what kind of nutrient efficiency are we accomplishing. So we call it the discovery plots, and we've seen some really cool things here in the last 2 years. Things that I'm really excited about going forward. We're going to continue to test some things, but there's quite a bit that we can learn. And the only way that you're going to learn is to do it on your own farm. So I would encourage you maybe not to do it to this extent, but set up some trials, do some things differently. Take an 80 and divide it into 240s and do a different practice on there. Maybe it's a biological in furrow, or maybe it's a foliar treatment or something like that. We do that with fungicide and things like that. Let's do it with some of the things that will make your fertilizer more available. And that's the main goal here. In doing the discovery plots, I learned that walking through with the backpack sprayer to do foliar feeding and things like that was not the most fun thing to do. And I've been researching these for a while. This is a DJI T30 drone, spray drone. So it can spray, it sprays about 2 gallons an acre. So great for fungicide, but it's also great for foliars and over the top treatments as well. So I pulled the trigger on that, and I tell you what, it was a blessing doing these small plots with something like this, where You didn't have to pull out the Hagee, or, you didn't have to do a full clean out. That's an 8-gallon tank, almost 8 gallons. So we could do small batches. So it's really been handy. And ended up, unintended consequence, doing quite a few custom acres this fall. We didn't have a lot of tar spot disease, but a lot of guys were spraying fungicide anyway, at least one time. And did quite a few acres there. So it was really popular. It drew a crowd, sparked up a lot of conversation, but I think the future is bright and there's a lot of momentum for these drones that they're going to play a part of the future for us. If you look here in the picture on the left, you can see a crop duster airplane in the background. We're working together. I don't think drones are going to take the place of airplanes. I think there's a place in this world for both of them, and helicopters as well, and Hagees as well. But the strength of the drone is, like in that middle picture, is accurate placement. And doing some testing here, we tested extensively because I didn't know getting into this what it was gonna, what kind of results we were gonna get, what kind of performance it was, whether it was gonna penetrate the canopy, or what is your width that you can spray at. But we found that we could spray at 25 to 27 feet per pass. And in doing the testing with the wettable paper, I was really impressed with the penetration down into the canopy. And I think that's going to be key as we see tar spot. The homegrown tar spot starts in the bottom and works its way up. So if we can get good penetration with our fungicides, we're going to have better results in the end. So all in all, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. Most people think that, you just set it, forget it, and it just goes on its lines like this. But inevitably there's maybe it's a deer stand in the field that you don't know about, or some tree lines that didn't get cut back like they should have. And so it's a lot of fun. So one thing that I learned back in the day was that soybean credit is worth 30 pounds of nitrogen. And that may or may not be true. We thought that if you plant soybeans the year before you plant corn, that you can use 30 pounds less nitrogen. That is true. But the fact that nitrogen produces 30 pounds more, or soybeans produce 30 pounds more of nitrogen and leave it in the soil is not exactly true. Soybeans have a very low residue. They have a low carbon to nitrogen ratio. And so we learn, and I'm sure you guys have learned this as well, that it's not a soybean credit, but it's more of a lack of a carbon penalty. When you have lots of residue, whether it's corn stalks or whether it's cereal rye or whether it's wheat stubble, that needs to be broken down, and the microbes need nitrogen. The microbes are going to eat before your corn plant or soybean plant does. The soil eats first and the plants eat second. So a lot of that nitrogen is not going to be available to the plants. It's going to be tied up by the microbes trying to break down that carbon. So as your corn stalks are about 50-to-1 carbon to nitrogen, and your wheat stubble and cereal rye can get up to 80-to-1, we want to rest in that 10 to 25-to-1. So while that nitrogen may not be available early on, as your biological engine gets stronger and faster and more powerful, that nitrogen is going to become available even earlier on than what you think. We learned that we got to honor our father and grandfathers. So I know one of the struggles between dads and sons is what you're going to do on the farm. And a lot of time dad wins because he's bigger and stronger and controls the checkbook. And I was super fortunate that my dad allowed me to try different things, and he liked to learn as well. And so we learned together. But yeah, it was, I felt the pressure not only to not lose the farm. And so that kind of keeps us in our lanes a little bit as far as branching out and trying different things and taking risks. But, they worked hard, and I wanted to honor them by doing some of the same practices. Sometimes though, being in the same practices or keeping those around too long can be detrimental. No one wants to lose the farm, but sometimes that happens. And I guess just to bring to light the seriousness of suicide for farmers, especially the dairy farmers and some of the livestock guys that may be living a more solitary life with their livestock, and the pressure gets to them, and the markets get tough and they contract. I guess I would encourage you guys to reach out to your growers or to your neighbors and just be there for them. So in terms of changing and learning and growing and preserving not only the way that your dad and your grandpa did things, but also the whole farm. If you lose the farm, you're not honoring them at all. So in order to learn and grow, we have to innovate. And on the right here is a learning curve or adoption curve that most products, most processes, most industries will see that, it's a bell curve. The early adopters and the innovators and the guys on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge are few and far between. And then you get into early adopters, early majority, and then you get basically to the point where it's common practice. So innovate means to renew or to change. So innovation generally refers to the creation of better or more effective products, processes, technologies, or ideas that are accepted by an environment. So as we challenge ourselves going forward, and Illinois Soybean Association does a great job of bringing ideas to us and thinking about how to do things differently, whether it's, planting your soybeans early or lowering your populations or, different types of weed control and things like that. I guess my encouragement to you would be to, try some new things. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to do things differently. And maybe it's not successful, but you're going to learn something as well. And that's where the true value comes in. So don't be afraid to innovate. You don't have to be on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge, but do try to do some things differently. I learned that I must keep what I have learned close to the vest. If I share what I have learned with my neighboring farmer, he or she may become a better farmer than me and potentially take my ground. And that may be a strong statement, but and maybe your guys' counties are different than mine, but a lot of guys want to keep stuff close to their vest and they don't want to share with other growers. They don't want to put themselves out there to be hurt. Maybe they don't do things quite as well, or they're not as innovative. And so that we'll pull back and we'll not share about what works and what doesn't work. I would encourage you to find a peer group or a mentor group, and maybe you do. Maybe it's a coffee shop or maybe it's a church, but don't be afraid to share your experiences, whether they're good or bad, and don't be afraid to help your neighbors to do better. I think that's something that we all need to learn to do. I know that I need to do it too. I'm scared that if I share something with a guy that he'll use that against me, and that's not the right attitude to have. Zig Ziglar says, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help other people get what they want. And I've heard that said many different ways. And honestly, it's proven to be true the more you put it into effect. So there's plenty of ways to share. Like I said, whether it's at the coffee shop or a phone call to your neighbor or, Twitter or different groups online or in social media, don't be afraid to share. Don't feel like you have to keep everything to your chest. You're going to feel better about it. You're going to help others, and in turn, that's how you're going to get what you want. So we learned that more nitrogen makes the corn greener. And while that may be true to a certain aspect or a certain level, we also know that too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And we don't want to just put more on just because we don't want to be short. And with the impending regulation coming, then we've got to learn how to do things differently, or at least be prepared to, if we're asked or required to cut back on our fertilizer that we use. So one reason for that is not just economically, but in growing higher yields, that as you can see Mulder's chart and the pH availability chart. I know you guys have seen this before, but the nitrogen is affected by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different nutrients. So whether it's potassium or whether it's calcium or copper, how you treat one nutrient affects how you treat the rest of your nutrients. So we need to be careful that we don't get out of line, get out of balance. We use too much just to make sure that we have enough. Let's be smarter about that. One thing that I know is that pH has a great deal of influence on how available your nutrients are. So as you look at this, if you try and stay between 6.2 and we typically say 6.8 in our area, that you're going to have biology working for you. You're going to have those nutrients more available and less tied up. So what happens in the pH is that it's not that your magnesium or your calcium is not there, but if the pH is different or not quite right, then it gets tied up with other nutrients, much like in the Mulder's chart there. So that's why pH is critically important in making sure your nutrients are available to your growing crop. We also learned that plants growing in crops steal water and nutrients. While that may be partially true, it's not 100% true. As you know, you may have known, there's a guy out in Indiana, his name is Jason Mock, and he basically does strip-till wheat over manure and then plants soybeans in between it. He grows them both at the same time and then harvests them both at different times. So he'll go through in July and harvest the wheat, and then he'll come back in October and harvest the beans. And most guys, when they first see this, I know when I did, I thought that was very, very silly. And how is that going to work? So many questions about it. But as you work through those questions and obstacles, you find out that it does work. And when you can grow 70 bushel wheat and 70 bushel beans, that's a pretty good ROI on your acre there. I think you use 1 pass of dicamba as weed control and use the manure as fertility. And I think the wheat seed was spread at about a 1/3 rate with the strip till manure pass. So very low inputs, very high reward. We learned that the chemical and physical properties are the most important things. Your physical being impacted by, tillage, cultural practices, things like that. Chemical being your nutrients that you apply, ag lime, things like that, herbicides, pesticides. But we also learned, or we are learning, that we need to shift the way we think about things, and that biology is going to trump everything. That's one of the things that I really did learn out here, and that's what we work the most with, is how can we use biology effectively to grow more better, right? And so we've been working with different types of microbes. We've been working with biostimulants, and really have seen some really cool things. We have to do tillage to have a good seed bed. And while that may be true sometimes, that's not always true. We do a bit of strip till on our ground, in full disclosure, and we do that before the corn. Soybeans will plant into the green cereal rye, and have had really good success with that. So while as corn it's more important to have a good seed bed, full width tillage may not be necessarily necessary. So I would encourage you to look into doing more of a no-till or strip till. The benefits are fantastic. They're many, and they can't be duplicated by tillage. So tillage is a great short-term solution for a few things, and sometimes tillage is a good thing, whether it's to reset your soil or incorporate your fertilizer, things like that. But I would caution you to not do more tillage than is necessary. One of the reasons tillage works so well is because it's basically like Red Bull to the soil microbes. So the picture on the right shows the biological activity when you do tillage. So April, May, June, once you hit that with your soil finisher or field cultivator, you're going to see that huge spike in microbial activity. In turn, that's going to make your nutrients more available, as biology makes nutrients more available. And so therefore you see that may potentially see where you would have your yield bump from tillage. It's thought that tillage produces higher yields than no-till, and sometimes it can, but there's also high yields produced in no-till, as we've seen this year too. So if you look at the picture on the left, you see a much more controlled, much more even distribution of your soil respiration, which tells us that your microbial activity is a little bit more regulated, more even, more stable throughout the whole year. So we learned that no-till and cover crops are a tool in the toolbox to help control your moisture and also to protect the soil. It's great for weed control for a couple different reasons. Cereal rye has a bit of an allelopathic effect on small-seeded broadleaves, whereas it also ties up a lot of the nitrogen that your water hemp would thrive on. So a couple different ways that it helps. And then it also, if you get it thick enough, it can have the shading response as well. Increased water infiltration. That's one of the biggest reasons that I got into cover crops, was to build that soil structure up and to help make the soil more of a sponge, as opposed to, a shelf for where your water would percolate through. I wanted it to actually absorb it and live in that soil, in the soil colloid. Houses beneficial insects and biology. If you want earthworms, plant some cereal rye and some radishes. And they say that Red Bull radishes are like Red Bull to earthworms. So I've seen that. Man, it's great to be able to go out there and stick a shovel in the ground and pull up a bunch of earthworms. It feels really, really good. Cooler soils, you may have some in the springtime, but you're also going to have some in the summertime as well, when it's 95 outside and your canopy hasn't quite shaded yet. And there's, we've all seen the thermometers in the ground. It could be 20 degrees cooler where you have some soil covered. We learned that we must broadcast full rates of commercial fertilizer to maintain our soils. While again, that may be partly true, it's not 100% true. The more I learn about the soils and what I've seen is that you've got plenty of fertilizer out there. And I'm not saying to cut out dry fertilizer altogether, but there are better times and better places for you to fertilize. Dry broadcast was a great tool for us 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Now we've got so many more options, whether it's, Y dropping, whether it's 2x2 on the planter, whether it's in furrow in the planter, whether it's using biostimulants to make your biology work harder for you to supply that that nutrition that your plants need. It's become a whole lot easier to use the 4 R's, whether it's the right source, right rate, right time, right place. We've got a ton of tools out there that allow us to do that. And so while dry broadcast will serve its purpose in places, there's other options out there that we need to be looking at. Something that struck me is that we have over 4,000 pounds of potassium and 9,000 pounds of phosphorus in the top 6 inches of soil in 1 acre. And that's just in the top 6 inches. If we've been doing tillage and making the top 12 inches homogeneous in fertility, then, double that. And I'm not saying that we need to deplete our soils, but let's use some of that, right? And how's the best way to use that? The best way is to make it available to the plant's roots via biology. Most, with the exception of nitrogen, all of your nutrients need to come in to the plants by biology, whether it's potassium or phosphorus or calcium or zinc. They all get carried in to your roots by biology. So that's one of the reasons why we need to do everything we can. They used to talk about earthworms being, our workhorse. It's our tillage practice. Well, our microbes are the ones that are the worker bees for us in the soil. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to build that up. I wanted to feed them. I wanted to pour as many sugars into the soil as we could in order to keep as many of those microbes living and give them a place to stay and fed and happy so that they could work for us and our plants. The definition of soil fertility is the capacity of a soil to provide crops with essential plant nutrients. So while we try and build up the soils so that there's so much fertility in there that the plants never go hungry or never go thirsty. Sometimes in terms of doing that, or in the process of doing that, we can do more damage than what we intend. So if you kill off all your earthworms by doing heavy tillage every year and using anhydrous, so that's one step in the process that in the whole biological system that is not being met. And so it's going to slow it down. If we do not take care of our biology and feed it, then it's not going to work for us, and it can't. So the microbes, the fungi, we need to do what we can to help access a lot of this potassium and phosphorus and nitrogen that's in the soils. 40% of the nitrogen that you apply, 40% of the nitrogen that gets into the corn plant is actual applied nitrogen, and the rest is supplied by the soils. Phosphorus, you're using 30% of your MAP or DAP in the first year. That's what's available to the plant. Every additional year after that, they say it's between 1% and 3% is available to the plant from that application. So these continue to go and get tied up in the soil and bond with, iron and zinc and things like that to keep them in the soil. So these nutrients are in there. We just need to learn how to unlock them and make them available when we're needed. This is a picture of my field. And you can probably see the little balls there that are circled. I believe those are earthworm middens or earthworm poo. So while I don't have access to livestock or chicken litter or hog manure, this is my manure. So this is a soybean plant root area. And this is where the earthworm, lived for however long. And he was taking the residue from up top and bringing it down in his hole and eating it and going through the whole cycle. And I just thought it was a great way to look at how animals and biology can all work together in the soil. Back in the day, we learned that healthy soils make healthy plants. And while that may be partially true, we've also learned that healthy plants make healthy soil. So if you're not starting out with a healthy soil, if you're starting out like in a rock, like this bottom right-hand picture, plants will grow even though there's no soil, even though there's no nutrients available to them. And the thing that makes that possible is the biology and the acids that are put off, the weak acids that are put off by the roots of that plant. So nature is a powerful thing and life will find a way. We all know that by the characteristics of weeds. I guess my encouragement to you and the whole point of this is to make sure that your plants are healthy, and they will help in turn create those healthy soils. I did an experiment on one of my rented ground that we used cover crops and reduced tillage and reduced fertility on this 70 acres. And we had it soil tested in 2018. And then we had it soil tested again in 2022, where I took the test from it. We test every other year, but 2018 versus 2022, looked at the organic matter, and not saying that this is going to happen every time, but it helped me feel a whole lot better about what I'm doing. We raised the organic matter 0.5% in 5 years. And so again, not saying that you'll get this every single time in every single soil, but out of the 12 zones, it's divided up into management zones. 11 out of the 12 saw an increase anywhere from, -3% decline to almost 1% in organic matter growth. So I guess a bit of an encouragement to you guys that, the cover crop thing is a real deal, and making your soils more resilient and more healthy and more soft and more fed is really, it's really a good thing, man. And you may not see the benefits, or you may not see it on a spreadsheet on year 1, but you may see it in year 5, and you'll definitely see it in year 10. And, they say you're either growing or dying. So you're growing your soils, or, you're destroying your soils. And when you know that there's a way to grow it back, that makes it a whole lot easier to try and adopt that. So we learned that a good farmer, and back in the day, this is Dave Brand on the left, and this is my dad on the right. My dad was a great farmer because he could fix stuff. He was a hard worker. He was up at 5 o'clock and always doing something. And he could make anything go. He was a mechanic by birth, and that's what made him successful. And that's what made a lot of farmers successful. Nowadays, I think that times have changed, and that if you're going to be a successful farmer, you're going to be more like a CEO, building a team and running a multi-million-dollar business. And that's exactly what it is. And I think sometimes growers don't think about it that way, but I think it needs to be treated more like a business. And I think the more successful guys that do that are going to be the ones that are farming in the future. There's a lot of consolidation going on, whether it's in business and industry, or whether it's, farmers partnering together and passing stuff on and sharing equipment. But there needs to be a lot more planning, succession planning, business planning. The guys that are good with the spreadsheets are going to be the ones that are the most successful in the end. So I would encourage you to work together with someone that you trust in putting down some of these processes and being able to scale up and to grow, or maybe scale down and become more profitable. Back in the day, we used to get all of our information from the universities, and I have great love for the universities. They do a lot of great work, and in the past, they were able to do things that us as normal people or even business and industry weren't able to do, and a lot of knowledge there. I think sometimes they're a little bit slower to react nowadays, and so we're learning from, either the tools that we have accessible to ourselves, to whether it's a yield monitor, whether it's auto guidance or auto shutoffs or variable rating. We can do a lot of our own testing, whether it's us ourselves or maybe we do some things with our neighbors. So my encouragement to you is to dedicate at least something to on-farm research and development. And I know that's a tough thing to do because it takes time and it takes planning and it might take some clean out, but what you can learn on your own farm, you guys don't want to hear what I have to say as far as yields are concerned, because you haven't done it on your farm. Well, step one of learning if it can work on your farm is to do it on your farm. And so we write protocols for guys and do quite a bit of research. So if that's something you're interested in, we can do that, or find somebody that can help you do that, or can hold your feet to the fire, maybe would be the best thing. But with the seed treaters out there now, the GIS and auto steer, this is what we do at our discovery plots. And while it looks very busy and complicated, we found a way to make it so it's actually manageable, and we can plant these 40 acres in half a day to 3/4 of a day. Yeah, try out Proven, try out Pivot Bio, try out Source, try out whatever you're doing. We've got products that you can try, and with the yield monitors nowadays and the scales on the auger carts, there's really no reason you shouldn't be able to test whatever you want to. When you do test whatever you want to, be prepared, full disclosure, that not everything will work like it's supposed to, and sometimes you'll have some mess ups. So my advice to you is to be prepared for everything to not work perfectly. We tend to run on very tight margins and very tight schedules. I would say build in some time just in case something wouldn't work. Jar tests are always a good idea, but stuff happens, but that's all part of the process. Learn about it, expect it, and manage for that. That's about the end of my part of the presentation. A couple freebies that I wanted to give you, just some of the things that I found interesting. If you're looking for a good blog or newsletter, Shane Thomas puts one together called Upstream Ag Insights. It's a look at a lot of the companies buying up companies, new technology. He's got a very down-to-earth idea about what's going on, and very unbiased reporting of what's going on here in the agricultural space. One of my favorite books is called The Biological Farmer by Gary Zimmer. Some of the podcasts I listen to, Advanced Eco Agriculture podcast by John Kemp. The Farm for Profit podcast is very good and quite hilarious. The Future of Agricultural podcast is very, very good and comprehensive too. The Vance Crow podcast is also very good to help you to try and think about things differently. So my contact information is on the bottom. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. My phone number, my email address. So if you guys have any ideas or see something that you want to try or talk through, feel free to call me or reach out. And I appreciate the opportunity today. Thanks for letting me share.